Hello, I'm Greg Hartjes, Superintendent for the Appleton Area School District. Thank you for joining me for this video where I'm going to answer the question, how did the AASD's financial crisis happen? So any discussion around school finances needs to include information about how the state legislature controls the funding increases that come from the state and from local property taxes. So as a school district, much like municipalities, the hope is always that the state is going to increase our funding at an amount that matches the inflationary increase expense for a year. If you look at this chart here, I have the last 15 years. I actually can say that the last 16 years, the funding increases that have come for school districts from legislature have not matched inflation. Now, in many of these years, if you look down at the bottom here, an inflation rate in 2011 of 1.64, then it went to 3.16. But if you look through 2021, over the course of these years, these 11 years, the inflation rate averaged less than 2%. So although school districts didn't get those type of increases, we didn't match inflation, because the inflation wasn't that high, we were able to manage. We were able to make ends meet by making some minor cuts every year throughout this 11-year stretch. Unfortunately, what happened in 2022 is this was the second year of the 21 to 23 state budget, and it included no increase in funding. So no increase in funding and these high inflationary rates is really what caused the district to have a financial crisis, and not just the Appleton Area School District, but many, many districts across the state. It ultimately resulted in us having a $1.5 million deficit at the end of 23, the end of 24, it had gone to 7. At the end of 25, it went to 13 million. So let me explain a little bit more about how that happened. I want to take you back to 2022, 2023. This is our school year, is also our fiscal year. We had come off of 9 straight years of having a balanced budget. And having a balanced budget included us being able to put a little money away at the end of each year into our reserves. It's called a fund balance. And we had built up an $18 million fund balance. We also had paid off our 2014 referendum bonds in 9 years. Rather than stretching them out 20 years, we prepaid, we saved over $5 million in interest, I believe, by prepaying on that debt. So we were in a very strong financial position when we went into our referendum in November of 22. But there was a little bit of cause for concern, and that was, again, it was our second year of having no funding increase. Now, the first year, 21-22, we managed because the inflation rate was only 1.23%. But in this year, where we saw a 4.7% increase in inflation, that posed some challenges for us. At the end of that year, we had a $1.5 million deficit. So the first time, like I said, now in 10 years, that we did not have a balanced budget. When that carried over into the next year, in 23-24, we still had a strong reserves, our fund balance. We were carrying over a $1.5 million deficit, but we were optimistic because we were starting a new 2-year budget from the state. The 2023 to 2025 budget did include funding increases. And so we knew we were going to get a 3.9% funding increase in that year, and we did. A large increase for us. Unfortunately, the rate of inflation was 8% that year. Now, some of the pieces that really add to this struggle is the fact that we had tech contracts that went up over 20% this year. We had cybersecurity that we had to add. At one time, I can say 5, 6, 7 years ago, we were paying maybe $10,000 to $20,000 for cyber insurance. We now pay $500,000 for cybersecurity because insurance is hard to get now around cyber. Our special ed costs continue to go up exponentially, and our state is not covering what is legally required of them to cover. So in this year, we had to transfer and cover $25 million in special ed costs. Now, these are costs that are meeting the needs of students and are federally by law required. So as a district, we're required to provide these services, but the state is supposed to support that, which they are doing less and less of. And then finally, we had to make some changes around our health plan. At the end of 2023, our fully insured carrier went out of business, which meant we looked for other carriers. We ultimately went to self-funding. All of that came together to be a very challenging fiscal year in 23-24. We ended with a $7 million deficit. When that brought us to the following year, so now last year, 24-25, we still had some dollars in our reserves. We had a $7 million structural deficit, so if nothing changed in this year financially, we were still going to have a $7 million deficit. The funding increase that year from the state and local property taxes was 2.75%, but the inflation rate was hanging around 4%. So a struggle there. Now, again, in this year, we started to look at, okay, how are we going to manage this, knowing that our reserves were almost depleted, and we were still seeing inflationary rates that were higher than our funding increases. So we started to talk about, and we consolidated some schools. We changed our health plan to self-fund. We moved some special ed students who were outside of the district into district schools to save some dollars. So we were planning for this, and then ultimately we started to talk about a referendum. In all of these years that I'm talking about, the inflation rate is where most districts are giving compensation, salary increases. We knew we couldn't afford to give salary increases at the rate of inflation, and so we gave salary increases that were somewhere between our funding increase and the rate of inflation. Now understand that when we're looking at teachers and pay, we're competing with all other local districts, but we're also competing with private sector who can hire teachers away from us. So we had a lot of concerns in these years coming out of the pandemic, obviously, around being able to retain quality teachers. With that, we have support positions that are making anywhere from $16 to $22 an hour. And obviously those positions were competing with people as well with private sector. And so in this situation, we looked at it and knew we couldn't afford to give raises at the level or salary increases at the level of inflation, but we tried to get close to that. Ultimately, we ended this year with a $13 million deficit, the 24-25 year, which brought us to this year. And that's why we're going to referendum in April. Now, keep in mind that when the state legislature took control of school finances in 1993, they said, if you need more funding for your students, if your community believes you should be spending more on your educating of students, you need to go to referendum, ask your community. So that's what we're doing. We're going to referendum for 4 years, meaning in 4 years from now, we're going to look at where we are financially. It is our hope that the state will be contributing more funding, so less has to come from property taxes at that time, and we'll reassess where we are. And the cost is going to be $15 on $100,000 of property. If you own a property, the average property is $300,000 in value in Appleton, be $45 a year for 4 years. Thank you for listening. In my next video, I'm going to talk about some of the different ways that we've looked at trying to save dollars.